Hmm. Hmm. Dr. Weston, yes, Lorelei, Dr. Lorelei Weston, Doctor of Medicine, of course. Have we crossed paths before? I must say you are strikingly familiar. I never forget a gait or the length of an arm. I'm also quite familiar with cranium sizes. What can I say? You know, some people remember names. I just remember cranium sizes. It's a gift, really. Heavens, though. Heavens, though, you are familiar. How many cones are in your irises? Have perhaps we worked together before, or have you ever been to Cardiff? Hmm, me neither. So do you often come to 1968? Hmm. Don't pay attention to that. That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. But your cranium, though, I it is an exquisite girth. Has anyone ever told you that your cranium is an exquisite girth? Oh, well, it certainly is, though. Hmm. Just thought I might ask, that's all. Nothing personal, of course, darling. Ah, of course, the War of 1918. Lively day and age, if you ask me. Well, yes, I do. I do frequently go to 1918. You see, it's a wonderful period in which to collect specimens for my research. It's just not possible you could have been my specimen. I only go for the ones that are not quite living, and while you do seem advanced in age, I'm afraid you're still also among the living. So it's just not possible. Yes, well. Oh, tell me your name again. I'm so sorry. Do you remember now? Yes, the Mesopotamian god. How marvelous. Oh, how are you? Oh, you look just awful. Um, hmm. Heavens, has it been? Oh, heavens, time flies. I dare say. My dear soldier friend. How splendid. This is delightful. Well, very well, please. Let me get you a cup of tea. How about that? Yes? All right. One moment. Ah, there we are. I'm afraid that this will have to do then, won't it? English breakfast. I presume that is a joke of some nature. Some hot water. There you are. And perhaps a little English breakfast. I haven't been back to England in quite some years, unfortunately, but can't go wrong with a good English tea, I think. There we are. Just put that right in there. For an American, I suppose it's close enough. And it turns out that things that produce heat actually do quite literally affect the soul. Who knew that the movement of heat through any kind of ectoplasm would produce such a pleasant sensation both in the spirit and in the heat, which it turns out can also feel. Ah, science. How wonderful. Mm, very warm. Very warm. Well, go on then. Do enjoy. Yeah, you have yours. There you are. Of course, I've brought my own as well, so we're both taken care of. Oh, how kind of you to ask. Yes, the space orangutan study. It's been progressing marvellously well, quite swimmingly indeed. My colleague, Dr. Van Helsing, and his daughter, Elisabetta Van Helsing, are on Io as we speak, collecting hair and teeth samples from some of, well, the less unwilling space orangutan specimens. Their work is so priceless, and I'm so grateful for their sacrifice, as with all sacrifices in the name of science, of course. We shall expect the full results within the next 2 centuries, however long it should take them to fully wrestle an adult orangutan into a tiny little space capsule. It'll be so very exciting. I can't wait personally. Oh, never mind that, but how wonderful that you survived. Oh, heavens. So you did make it out of the war then? Of course, darling. Hmm. They resolve themselves, as I said, they all do. Allow me to move a little closer then, shall I? Oh, there we are. Oh, you poor dear. Age has not been kind, I must say. I'm so sorry. Marvellous. If I might just borrow a little bit of your time, though, I recognise that it's running a bit short on your end, to ask and get your answers on a few questions for my research. I hope you do not mind if I ask them now. Uh, Wonderful. Of course. Science thanks you. I'm so wonderfully excited. This will be brilliant. Wonderful. Get started, shall we? I have a series of questions here. Oh, do you know the date? Yes, they'll kind of blend for me after a while, you see. Ah, thank you. Of course. How could I forget? May? Is it May? Oh. The Gregorian calendar, how charming. All right, so, um, hmm. Is it spelt like the Mesopotamian god? No? Spelling, please. Hmm. Wonderful. And your age now, if you don't mind. Human years only, please. Wonderful. Younger than I thought, I must say. And I'll take your exact birthday, please. Again, in human years only. Thank you. Wonderful. I'll convert it from the Gregorian calendar later. They use quite a different format in the year 4000, and that is where the rest of my research will be taking place, no doubt. So I'll hold on to this for a few millennia and do the conversions when I get back to my laboratory. So, since we last spoke, how significantly would you say, my dear friend, has your exposure to mustard gas reduced? Significantly? Yes. That's a shame. Well, yes, it's wonderful for you, of course, but now I must dispose of this entire sheet, you see, because this entire sheet of questions, in fact, pertains to a subject with a lifelong mustard gas exposure, which is, quite unfortunately, not you, as you have just let me know. I'm afraid that list is bunk. No, don't beat yourself up, of course. It's not your fault. But the war ended a little bit prematurely for my data to be correct. I'm sure I will find another specimen in due course. Uh, Perhaps never, but perhaps still. So, next question, shall we? Are you aware of the number of digits on your left and right hand? Oh, yes, wonderful. Good. And what are they? By which I mean, what is their number uh, of digits per hand? Hmm. All right, excellent. Quite a normal number, but that's all right. So, who now was the president in 1862? Oh, no, darling. Of course, I mean the president of the Freemasons. Huh. Oh, oh, you do know. Oh, splendid. I was not expecting that, I must say. Very good. I've been asking folks for decades now, and you're the first one to give me a formal answer to that question. I do appreciate it. What is the capital of Kazakhstan? No, Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan. The capital, if you please. Great. And what about the capital of Pluto? Well, it's Zurbar. Write that name down for future reference. I do recommend. No decent Wi-Fi in 1968, I'm afraid to report. Your ear trouble. I believe we did. I believe at the time you were having a bit of an earache back in 1918 when we last met. How has that come along for you since? Oh, you've had lifelong ear trouble, it seems. Oh, that's a terrible misfortune, darling. I'm so sorry for you. So let me make a note of that, shall I? Yes, there we are. Lifelong ear trouble. Likely due to the mustard gas, yes? Next question. How is your throat chakra, darling? Oh, my. Well, I'm terribly sorry to hear that. We'll have a look at it in the end, shall we? Yes, that may also be related to your blocked throat chakra. You should really be more creative, darling, if I must say. Speak your truth. Doctor's orders, of course. You are certainly too far along in life at this point to be worrying about the opinions of others, so I think that there is nothing to be lost in taking some initiative for your creative side, if I may recommend. Next question. So, do you smoke? Non-smoker. What about weed, hallucinogenics? Black tea. Have you ever coughed up a hairball? Well, yes, I'm aware, of course. I did, in fact, go to medical school. I'm quite familiar with the human anatomy. But the question is for you, not me. So do answer the question. Much obliged. So, with what paste do you brush your teeth these days, darling? Yes, I did perhaps prescribe baking soda in 1918, but as it is in fact 1968, I believe Crest is now an option that you have. Perhaps it may be time to update your hygiene routine, darling. Just a casual recommendation. Yeah, make note of this. And, all right, so, how about that? We're at the last question. So, final question then. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Perhaps beyond your ken, then. I suppose I best check those ears. Do hold still. I'm going to get a bit closer now, so don't take it personally, yes? Let me take a look at this ear. There we are, darling. Bit of a blockage, but we've cleared it out. Let this side then, if I may. Yes? Oh. This is a bit unusual. Oh. I dare say, darling. It's perhaps an unusual question. Have you recently had a run-in with, Ostara, goddess of spring? Well, you see, the reason I ask, of course, is your ear. While the cavities itself seem quite healthy, there seems to be a blockage that. Well, let me just show you, shall I? Oh, heavens! You see, there seems to be a bit of spring in your ear. Right. No judgment from me, darling, of course. Let me get the rest of it then, yes? Make sure that spring stays on the ground and in nature and not in your head. There we go, there's another one. And perhaps one more up here, there. And no. Oh, oh my. Oh. It seems you've bloomed, darling. Delightful. Oh, clear that rubbish up, anyway. So, I think should you stay away from the goddess of spring, perhaps your ears will function a bit more smoothly. She can be a bit tempestuous. We have tried to quell her in the past, and I'm afraid it did not go very well. Even Elisabetta van Helsing struggles with her a bit. She's not a vampire, unfortunately, so we can't quite just put her out of her misery. She's a bit necessary for the functioning of the planet. Oh, terrible tragedy, I do agree. Some tea for the displeasure. So very soothing. But besides staying away from the goddess of spring, I would recommend perhaps using a bowl, a little syringe perhaps, with some water, and just squirting it in either ear as the irritations arise. I do not recommend using hydrogen peroxide, though I recognize that is a method of the times. It's proven to be not quite so helpful for the ears in a few, decades from now. Overall, I think a lot of your ear problems, both the spring in the ear problem and the typical blockage, do in fact originate from the blocked throat chakra. It's very important to keep your chakras open and cared for. The science is not understood in 1968 any more than it was in 1918. In fact, we are all source energy, and the energy that resonates in both lava lamps and trees and what have you runs in fact through us and produces a sensation that we would equate to sickness when it is in fact out of alignment. My recommendation would be we do a little bit of a cleansing, apply some of this lovely spray to your throat chakra area. It will meld with the aura, the auric field around the chakra, and encourage it to expand and release the blockage. A lovely spray for communication, truth, and self-empowerment. You can also open the throat chakra through creative enterprises. In fact, I do recommend, despite your advanced age, that you find yourself a creative endeavor to indulge in your after hours, perhaps watercolor painting or ceramics, or I believe knitting is quite a useful creative endeavor for one of your generation. Now do hold that stone very carefully. Mind the arthritis in your knuckles. I can see it. It appears quite terrible. Just meditate on it. Make a little mirror of light around it in your mind's eye, and I shall go around and spray you with this wonderful cleansing spray. And 1, 2, 3. And again. And it. It has a wonderful lavender scent, I think. Quite delightful. Like a lavender sage, perhaps. Citrus as well. Wonderful. Your aura has responded marvelously. Your homework for the rest of the week, should your octogenarian self make it home in a fit state to do work, is to paint or perhaps rearrange furniture, try some ikebana, if you so choose, to maintain your self-expression and keep that throat chakra in a fit and healthy state. I believe our time grows short, darling. My dear ancient ex-soldier, you've been very kind to donate your time in this way. I'm afraid that's the end of our little session today, however. I seem to have forgotten many of my supplies on the Titanic, and I will not be going back to get them. So Do forgive me for not performing our usual exam. Should you be alive in a decade, perhaps leave me a note somewhere and I will locate it in the future and come back to that age and we can perform your examination then. Do apologize for the rain check. It's been a pleasure, truly, to see you again, my dear Mesopotamian god. I wish you a happy slow decay into the grave, as that seems to be your next most unfortunate great adventure. If such is the case, we shall not be meeting again, sad to say. The exception to that, of course, being if you are in fact turned into a vampire sometime between now and then, at which point it is technically feasible that you will see me again. However, for your sake, you should hope you do not. Because should you, it will only be for a few seconds, during which time I shall be reporting you to the authorities. It's true, of course, Dr. Van Helsing is quite loath to leave his work, but Elisabetta, she's glad to come down from space at my request. You could say that she owes me a bit of a favour. Should you still be alive in a decade or so, do fold up a note and tuck it in the foundations of the nearest bank building, or perhaps even the Washington Monument. Just tuck it right in there. I'm sure the guards won't even notice one of your advanced age performing such a task. In it, just leave me a record of your current age, the date, your height, your weight, your BMI, blood pressure, acupuncture history, any other little trinkets you deem necessary. It's true you were not immersed in the gas as long as I would have liked for my data, but if you wouldn't mind measuring your cranium once too and putting that in as well, it's much easier for me to remember my patients according to their cranium size, as I mentioned quite early on in the very beginning. So you'd be doing me quite a favour if you wouldn't mind just doing a quick measurement, putting all this information, folding it up in a little piece of paper and tucking it in the Washington Monument. In due time, I shall come and retrieve it to add your length of life and other such information to my data for the sake of thoroughness. And with that, adieu, happy sleep, and a long delay of the Reaper to you, my dear ancient friend. It's been a divine pleasure. Well, darling. Darling.